Hi, friends. So it's Monday again, which means we're back. I am AnnaLee Dragon, the director of the Kinderhook Memorial Library. And for my book talk this week, I wanted to touch on something that's been in the news for the past week or so and has been on many of our hearts and minds, including my own, which is the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, one of our Supreme Court justices in the United States and a personal hero of mine, mostly for her work in gender equality and her, just her general being. She was fair, she was kind, she was well-spoken, and she was just a role model for a lot of people, including myself. So I thought we would do her a little honor today by talking about some of the books and movies and things that are available if you don't know much about her personal life. She had actually a fascinating history in her 87 years, and I just thought it might be an interesting thing to discuss. So she has become a bit of a pop culture icon in the last few years, right? Like, she has the nickname Notorious RBG, which is after the Notorious B.I.G., who was a rapper. That's where they got the idea from. And she knew that. I saw her interviewed and she spoke about it, and it was very endearing. So the first book that I wanted to talk about, and I don't have these all in front of me because a lot of them are checked out right now because people are reading about her or remembering her, but they are all in our catalog in our system, so you can request them and you will get them hopefully pretty quickly. So the first one I wanted to talk about is, don't mind my look down, is the Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg by Erin Carman and Shanna Nisnik. And so this one was kind of a moment of pop culture. It has a picture of her on the front, which is styled after a photo of a drawing of the Notorious B.I.G. It's got her with a crown on sideways, and this book focused on, her life, her early life, her work, how she got to be on the Supreme Court, her opinions about things, her just general wit and sense of humor. There is actually also a children's version of this book, and it's also in the catalog. So if you have younger ones that you wanted to share it with, there is a format of it that's a little more friendly for kids. I loved this book. I learned a lot about her, which is always neat when it's somebody that you're interested in. And it has just a really neat, modern, fresh kind of take on her. So I would highly recommend that one as a starting place if you haven't picked that book up yet. Another one I read that came out a few years ago that I thought was really fascinating isn't solely about her. It's called Sisters-in-Law: How Sandra Day O'Connor and Ruth Bader Ginsburg Went to the Supreme Court and Changed the World. I'm getting all teary thinking about this. So this book focused on the legal life, her legal life in grad school, both of them actually, because Sandra Day O'Connor was the first female justice. And so Ruth Bader Ginsburg and she became the two women on the Supreme Court. And that's, there's only 9 members, so they were still a minority. And I thought it was really interesting because it looked at their very different lives and their very different kind of personalities, but the friendship and the kinship that developed between them and that they shared, even though they were from different parties. Sandra Day O'Connor was a Republican and Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a Democrat. I think it illustrates the fact that the Supreme Court is not supposed to function like that. They don't bring their politics into it, theoretically. It's them being judges. And I really appreciated the kind of respect. I think often women are not as supportive of each other as we could and should be. And I feel between them, I felt the real bond of kinship. Even when they disagreed about things, there was a respect there. And that is a note you will see throughout Ruth Bader Ginsburg's life, because she was also very close with Antonin Scalia, who was arguably politically the opposite end of the spectrum from her. But they had a really near and dear friendship, and I think that speaks highly of both of them. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg has a history sort of developing those friendships regardless of the political stances of the people around her, which I think is a sign of a person of integrity. And so I found the book about her and Sandra Day O'Connor, they had very different tactics for sort of dealing with the fact that they were the minority on the Supreme Court and that they were women in this place that had traditionally been a man's place. So I really appreciated this book. I learned a lot about both of them, but it's focused not so much, a little on their private lives, but much more on their legal careers. So if you're interested in that, Sisters-in-Law, which is by Linda Hirschman, is the name of the author. And I will put the slides of the covers and of the books at the end of this so that you can look through them and see if there's any you'd like to request and get a hold of through our system. The third book I wanted to recommend is called My Own Words, and it's by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. obviously. It is her own words. And it is a collection of her writings and speeches. And what's really interesting is it goes as far back as 8th grade. I think RBG was a strong personality from the get-go. And so it talks a lot about even her young life and how her opinions were formed and how she got to where she got to. It was, it talks about her friendship with Scalia, which I just mentioned. So there's some of that, and you get to see what's really interesting, because I think oftentimes at this point in history, our political beliefs are sort of, the people around us share them. Like we gravitate towards people with the same political beliefs that we have. And I think it's interesting that she didn't always do that. And so maybe there's something to learn there about, loving people for people, and maybe not solely making decisions based on political beliefs, and trying to really get to know each other and talk to each other and see each other as people. So I thought that was really interesting. Also, just getting to read her own words is interesting. Like you read a lot about her, but hearing she was a brilliant mind. And I think getting to read her own words for these things makes it all the more powerful. The fourth book I'm going to recommend is a similar vein. It's called Conversations with RBG. Ruth Bader Ginsburg on life, love, liberty, and law. And so obviously this goes into all parts of her life. So it talks about her personal life and her marriage to Marty Ginsburg, who after you read some of these books, you will grow to love him as well, because behind every strong woman, there is an amazingly supportive man. And he was her biggest fan and her biggest champion. And isn't that what we're all looking for in a partnership? So, and I believe they had a true partnership. You see some of the things that they went through during law school at Harvard, and it's just a really endearing part of her life, and helps you know how she had the freedom and the strength to be the person that she was. So that book, Conversations with RBG, is interviews with her. So you get, again, to hear some of her own thoughts on life and her world. And then the fifth book I want to recommend, I think is a little tongue-in-cheek and also completely serious. It's called the RGB Workout. So her personal trainer, Bryant Johnson, made a book that had her workout in it, because as I'm going to mention in some of the movies I'm going to talk about, RGB hit the gym regularly, and it's partly how she lived to be so on top of things at 87 years old. She had a workout that would put me to shame. I am not a gym rat, so I think that it's awesome, and I love the idea that that they made a book out of her workout. I think there's also a video that goes along with it. So if you're interested in her fitness regimen, there's definitely resources for that, which I just love that got made. I think that that's awesome. We don't often look to our older citizens for the fitness, their fitness goals, but I think that she was some, and it's great that we could learn something from that. So I really appreciate that, a little levity also. And then the last two things I wanted to talk about were a couple of films that were made about RGB that you may be interested in. So the first one is just called RBG. And it is a documentary. It was actually nominated for the best documentary at the 2019 Oscars. It didn't win, but it was nominated. And it is a documentary about, wow, my words today, about her life. And it talks from her history, like college, Harvard Law School, her marriage, her family relationships, into becoming the Supreme Court justice that we all know. And I thought it was done really well. There are interviews with her interspersed in it. There are other friends and family speaking about her. I think one of my favorite parts was that her granddaughter spoke on the film. And, to her granddaughter, she's not the notorious RBG. She is Bubby, which is the most adorable thing ever. And I loved hearing about her from her family, because, she is a mother and a wife and a daughter and a grandmother, and all of those things are facets, right? We're all rounded people. We all have many different parts to our personalities and facets in our lives. And I think the more of those you see, the better you get to know someone. And so it really gives you like a connection to them. And I know it definitely made me feel more connected to this person who I look up to immensely. And then the last movie I wanted to recommend is called On the Basis of Sex. And this is a biopic, so it's not nonfiction. It's a reenactment of a lot of things, a dramatization, I guess you could say. But it's all of this one focuses solely on one very particular aspect of her life, which was the landmark case that she brought with her husband to the Supreme Court about the idea of gender discrimination, that you shouldn't be able to discriminate against people. And I mean, it's hard for women of my generation or younger, I think, to really wrap your head around the fact that until this case, that was legal. They could discriminate against you at a work or anywhere because you were a woman. And that is something that we take for granted, I think, in my generation sometimes, that we just have all these rights. And a lot of it is because of women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And we can thank her for all of her massive contributions to our own equality and to making the world a more fair and equitable place. So these are the things that I have read and seen and loved about her. And I'm hoping that if you haven't checked any of them out, that you might, because I think you'll probably fall in love with her too. She's pretty hard to not love when you read and see these things. She's a person of character. She's a kind person. she has a sense of humor about herself and doesn't take herself too seriously, which I adore in a person in general. It's a great quality. And I really hope that you can take some time and honor her passing and her legacy, which is, as women, we should all be standing up for each other and all of the men in our lives standing up for us. And I just think it's a really important moment to celebrate in history. So we honor RBG this week, and we look forward to making a bright future that she would be proud of. So thank you all for coming to the book talk, and I will be back next week with something new, and I'm going to put the covers now of these books and movies at the end so you can check them out in your own time. Okay? Thanks so much. Have a great week, everyone.